Yo, welcome back to the Top T Testosterone Fundamentals course. In this module, we're going to go over what you can actually do to raise your testosterone. We're going to go over the 11 most important things that you can do to keep your testosterone high and get it as high as possible. So let's get into it. The first one is get leaner. If you're above 30% body fat, then your number one priority should be to lose that extra fat and get below 20% body fat. If you're already at 20, get below 15. The ideal body composition for testosterone levels is between 10 and 15%. Any higher than 15% and you'll be aromatizing more of your hard-earned testosterone into estradiol than you ideally want, which will lower your testosterone production long-term via that negative feedback loop that we went over in the HPG axis production pathway video and in the TRT and infertility video. Another thing that I didn't write in this book, but I do want to mention for you guys, is that if you are too lean, your testosterone levels will also go to shit. So the ideal body composition, like I said, is between 10 and 15%. If you're under 10, you might want to bulk up a little bit and get up to 10. That was actually my problem. I was way too lean. Keep in mind that testosterone is a reproductive hormone, and the body will always favor survival over reproduction. Having high testosterone levels and building muscle and doing a lot of the things that testosterone enables you to do is very energetically expensive. So if your body's not getting enough energy from food, and you're too lean and you're kind of starving, then you're not going to have optimal testosterone levels either, and GnRH production is going to be lowered. So keep that in mind. We don't want to be too lean, but we don't want to be too fat either. Somewhere between 10 and 15% body fat is ideal. Anywhere between 10 and 20 is acceptable. Next, we want to be walking every day. Make it a daily habit to walk every day, even if it's only for a few minutes. Walk around the corner, walk at the park, or even walk on the treadmill if need be. You can get a treadmill under your desk and you can walk at your desk all day while you're working if you're working at a desk all day. It's definitely, of course, better to walk outside, and it's better to walk with no shoes on and no shirt on at the beach with wet feet if possible, but do the best you can, of course. It's still better to walk on the treadmill at your desk than it is to not walk at all. Ideally, we're looking at 10,000 plus steps per day. 8,000 should be the absolute minimum per day that you walk every day. Next, we want to focus on nutrition. You want to make sure you're eating in a caloric surplus, which means you're consuming more calories than you're burning every day. You want to make sure you're eating enough saturated fat and cholesterol, eat enough carbs and natural sugar, don't eat too little protein, and also don't eat too much protein. Make sure you're not deficient in any micronutrients. Eat meats, organs if you'd like, eggs, shellfish, oysters, fish, dairy, and fruits especially. Steak and potatoes will never fail you as a baseline meal as long as you're sourcing high quality food. Oysters will never fail you either. So in the ebook, you can click down here to learn more about the Top T nutrition course, and you can dive right into that after this course. I suggest that's the first one that you take after you're done with the fundamentals course. So you can learn all the specifics about nutrition and how to really dial in your diet for maximum testosterone optimization. Next, we want to be optimizing sleep. So you want to make sure that you're sleeping at least 9 hours or 6 cycles per night. You want to minimize light exposure to your eyes after sunset with blue light blocking glasses if exposed to artificial light at night. You want to go to sleep early and wake up early instead of going to sleep late and waking up late. The sleep quality will not be the same and your melatonin exposure will not be the same. Eat a spoonful of local raw honey before bed with milk, which is optional. I think milk and honey is the best before bed combo. Additionally, you can bust a nut before bed if you deserve it. Don't drink caffeine within 12 hours of going to sleep. Sleep in complete darkness and silence if possible. Sleep on a hard surface, either a hard mattress or ideally the floor. So if you click at the bottom right here of this page, you can check out more information on the Top T sleep course where I explain everything that I just talked about in way more detail. There's modules on each of the topics I just discussed. So we discuss the actual sleep cycle and what that entails and why you need the amount you need. We discuss how much testosterone you make in your sleep. We discuss light exposure and the circadian rhythm and blue light and the negative effects of blue light, especially after sunset. We talk about the difference between going to sleep early and waking up early versus going to sleep late and waking up late, even when the amount of time that you're asleep is equated because of melatonin exposure. We talk about adenosine and caffeine and why I recommend 12 hours between drinking coffee or any caffeine and going to sleep. And we talk about all of the other things that I mentioned in separate modules in the Top T sleep course. That is the one that I recommend that you take right after you're done with nutrition. However, if you're more interested in getting your sleep on point than your nutrition on point, for example, if you already think your nutrition is pretty on point and you want to just focus on sleep first, you can get the sleep course first. They're not necessarily in chronological order. I just order them in the order that I think is the best for you to learn them in, but it's really up to you at the end of the day. Let's move on. Next, arguably the most important pillar of health and longevity overall is sunlight. It is absurdly underrated and not to be taken lightly. You want to make sure that you're getting adequate sunlight exposure on your skin and in your eyes every day. At least 15 minutes if your skin is extremely pale, and at least 2 hours if your skin is very, very dark. Those are minimum requirements. The recommendation is as much as you possibly can do without burning. Get outside and get sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning every single day. Get sunlight on your balls too if possible. Every single part of your body needs sunlight to thrive. Be outside during sunrise and during sunset. Ideally, be barefoot on the ground while you're in the sun. Keep a tan year round if possible. Maximize your vitamin D levels naturally to the best of your ability. Don't bring your phone with you out in the sun. Avoid EMFs as much as possible as they block your ability to fully receive the sunlight. It's better to put a shirt or hat on or to even just go in the shade than it is to go inside or put sunscreen on. Never use sunscreen or sunglasses. The transition away from sunglasses may take time when you're first getting used to not wearing them, but it's well worth it. Sunglasses were originally actually invented to protect the eyes of celebrities from the blue light of flash photography, not for people to wear outside in the sun. If you want more detailed explanations on anything I just mentioned in this section about sunlight, and especially if you're struggling to maintain your vitamin D levels and sun exposure in the winter where you're from, then definitely click in this bottom left corner and check out more information on the Top T sunlight exposure course. Again, everything I just mentioned in this section is explained in extreme detail in that course. And of course, we go into the science of how sunlight corresponds to testosterone and the science behind how sunlight exposure does increase your testosterone. And it does other things to make you jacked too, like lower myostatin and increase your insulin sensitivity and a bunch of other shit. Next, you want to lift heavy. You need to consistently push your body's physical limits if you want to maximize your testosterone levels. Train hard as fuck. Keep high intensity with all of your training. Keep setting new goals and crushing them. Train with heavy weights. Train legs at least 3 times per week ideally. Train explosiveness, sprints, jumping, heavy squatting, deadlifts, etc. Train different skills and advance both physically and skillfully. Although lifting heavy weights is great for your testosterone, it's not the only way to get your testosterone up through training. Any kind of pushing your body's limits and really challenging your muscles and your energetic expenditure will help get your testosterone up, undoubtedly. If you're interested in learning more about the science of how muscles grow and the difference between strength and hypertrophy training, then definitely click here and check out the Top T training course. There's also an entire section in the Top T training course where we focus on abs. So you can get abs like these and build the summer body of your dreams by learning how it all works and getting some less conventional abdominal exercises that actually work to get you sick abs. Hint, you don't have to do sit-ups. Next, testosterone is a sex reproductive hormone at the end of the day. You gotta clap ass. Do your best to optimize your sex life. More demand warrants more supply. So talk to lots of women and have lots of sex. If you want to learn more about why this is so important and why semen retention is absolute nonsense, and by avoiding sex, you're not going to increase your testosterone levels at all and how that's absolute BS, you can click here to learn more about the Top T sex course. This is a typo. It's supposed to say Top T sex course. I'm going to change that by the time I export the PDF and give it to you guys. So just bear with me on that. My bad. It's a typo. The link is actually live here. It says, toptacademy.com/sex. So that is the right link. However, it does say training. That is a typo. It will say sex when you get it, so don't be confused. In this course, we cover a bunch of different things related to sex, including the science of how sex actually does increase your testosterone, a comparison between the studies showing increases of testosterone from semen retention versus actually having sex. We talk about the effects that ejaculation directly has on your hormones like prolactin, dopamine, and testosterone. We go through pretty much all of the major arguments of why semen retention is supposedly good, and I debunk absolutely all of them from my experience with years of training semen retention and coming to the conclusion that it's not optimal for your body. We also talk about some of the things in the spectrum of attracting women, talking to girls, what makes you attractive to women as a man, different aspects of choosing the right woman to form a relationship with, and how to use Instagram as a dating site. So if you're interested in any of that, check out the Top T Sex course and click this link right here. Next, we have competition. You need to be competing. Out of all the studies, the tens of thousands of studies on testosterone out there, competition has demonstrated the single highest acute testosterone increase ever recorded in history. So you want to be competing with other men, especially when there are status and resources on the line. You want to compete consistently so that the effects of the increases can be more long-lasting over time, because competition is an acute spiker of testosterone, not a long-term production increaser. Same thing with sex, actually. We're going to go into more detail about the science of competition and its effect on testosterone in this course, actually. So stay tuned. Next, we want to reduce stress, or in general, just make sure we have a healthy level of stress. So cortisol, the common stress hormone, competes with testosterone for both production and androgen receptors. So more cortisol activity from stress means less testosterone activity. It means less testosterone can be produced from the cholesterol, right? Some of the cholesterol is being used for cortisol. The more cholesterol that you use for cortisol, the less you can use for testosterone. And then at the same time, the same receptors are used. So if you only have X number of outlets, the more outlets that are being plugged into by cortisol can not be bound to by testosterone. I like to use the parking lot and car example. The testosterone is your Ferrari and the cortisol is your Honda Civic. You have a limited number of parking spots in your parking lot, which is your body that's covered in receptors. So you want to have more Ferraris parked in your parking lot than the Honda Civics. But the more Honda Civics that park in your parking lot, the less spots there are for the Ferraris. So in order to keep cortisol down as much as possible, you want to stay carved up throughout the day, meaning eat enough sugar. Another useful tip is not to demonize stress. Not all stress is bad, and lots of stressors actually contribute a great deal to our improvement as men. So the aim should really be to minimize stress that is unnecessary, like metabolic or energetic stress. You want to stay fueled for the stresses of life, but you don't want to avoid stress altogether. We'll talk about in the prolactin module in this course that if you actually have too little stress, you'll increase prolactin, which suppresses testosterone. But if you have too much stress, then you're going to have too much cortisol, which is going to compete with testosterone. So you want a healthy amount of stress, not too much stress, not too little. Next, another thing you can do is ice your balls, or just ensure that the temperature of your balls is consistently colder as much as possible. So you can ice your balls or take a really cold shower with your balls in the water to cool them down in the morning. Cold plunges are great too. You want to really just avoid heat. So that's the main thing here. If you are exposing your balls to heat, you definitely want to ice them or do something to make them colder, either before but better after. So you want to avoid things like heated seats, tight underwear, unnatural materials for your pants and underwear, excessive hot tub or sauna use. Some of these things are not entirely bad, like the sauna, for example. It's not a bad thing to go in the sauna. You just don't want to overdo it and stay in there too long at one time so you fry your balls. For those of you like me that do love to go in the sauna and stay in there for as long as possible, there is a solution that I found. A brand actually reached out to me. They're called Snowballs. They make men's underwear that have pockets that have ice packs that perfectly fit into the pockets. So when you go in the sauna, you can put the ice packs in the underwear and wear those in the sauna and keep your balls cool and enjoy the sauna as long as you want. Pretty fire. So you guys can click this link down here to check out their website and see what they got and see if you're interested and you want to cop a pair. Next, but definitely not least, you want to avoid endocrine disruptors. There are lots of things that most people use today that disrupt their hormones in a plethora of ways. So here I'm going to list a couple of them, but if you want to learn more about them in detail, ways to replace them, the science of why they fuck up your hormones, you can check out the Top T Avoiding Endocrine Disruptors course at this link up in the top right of this page in the ebook. So some endocrine disruptors to be aware of and avoid as much as possible include non-native EMFs are number one, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, your phone in your pocket, all that kind of shit. You want to make sure that there are at least some points in the day where you are absolutely free from EMFs. When you go out for your walk in the park, don't bring your headphones, don't bring your phone. Go out and actually be in nature without non-native EMFs in your field. You can do things like turning off the Wi-Fi at night when you're sleeping, turning off your phone and not keeping it in the same room that you're sleeping in, things like that. Next, we have artificial light, especially at night, but even during the day, artificial light is definitely causing damage to your DNA and screwing up your body's clock, your circadian rhythm, regardless of what time you're viewing it at. Next, seed oils. You want to avoid all seed oils, vegetable oils, plant oils that are high in omega-6 PUFAs. Also, you want to kind of avoid over-consuming nut butters that are super high in omega-6s as well. Nuts aren't necessarily bad, but you don't want to be overdoing them with these like concentrated nut butters and having way too much PUFAs, especially if you're not supplementing vitamin E or getting a lot of vitamin E in your diet. Next is alcohol, and then we have xenoestrogens, which is basically all types of plastics and synthetic materials that are made from oil. So we have bisphenols like BPA, BPB, BPS, which you'll find in things like plastic water bottles, receipts, any kind of like waterproof paper kind of shit will have BPA in it. Also cans, any kind of canned food or canned drinks all have BPA. They're all lined with plastic on the inner surface. Next, we have unnatural clothing materials, so polyester, elastane, spandex, etc. Those are all made of plastics, all xenoestrogens. Just to sum up real quick what xenoestrogens are for you guys so that makes sense. They're foreign estrogens, so they're things that bind to your estrogen receptors and tell your body that you have higher estrogen than you have, which makes your hypothalamus release less GnRH and you produce less testosterone and less sperm. Xenoestrogens may or may not in the future cause infertility crisis to extinct the human race, realistically to some degree. Next, we have phthalates, which you'll find on on plastic shower curtains, things like paper plates and cups, and coffee to-go cups. There are a lot of things that you'll find phthalates in, so you can do your research, you can check out the Top T Avoiding Endocrine Disruptors course, and you can learn more about all of the things, but these are just a few examples for now. You also want to avoid pesticides, so conventional produce and processed foods that contain pesticides, you want to avoid those. You want to also avoid soaps and shampoos, etc. All of that kind of like hygiene product type shit. It's unnecessary. You don't need any of it. If you want to wash your hair, use an egg yolk or use water. Now, there are some brands that have good soaps that are pretty decent. I wouldn't fuck with any of them with your hair, but some of them, like if you really smell like shit or you have dirt all over you, some of them like goat milk soaps or African black soaps might be pretty decent as alternatives, but they're not 100% necessary realistically. Next, we have Teflon and cooking materials. You don't want to use non-stick pans and cookware. You want to use ceramic, stainless steel, or cast iron to cook your food. Next is candles, especially scented candles, but pretty much all candles. The wax is pretty fucked up. It's not good to be breathing in candles in your house in a closed environment with the candles burning for at least long, especially with the paraffin and soy wax candles. It's not good stuff. Next, we have fragrances in general. So whether that is candles or colognes, perfumes, air fresheners, deodorants, antiperspirants, all of that kind of stuff you want to avoid like the plague. You got to be careful about this with your girl too, because some of these girls, you go out for a date and she's like literally drenched in perfume. You go out in public and people are fucking drenched in that shit. You don't want to sniff it. You kind of want to stay away from it as much as possible. Try not to breathe that stuff in. It's really bad for your endocrine system. And again, a lot of these are also xenoestrogens. So they literally have a direct mechanism of action for lowering testosterone and sperm production. It doesn't mean never wear cologne. It means try to find a brand that has good ingredients, or just minimize the amount of times that you wear it and only wear it when you really have to smell your best for something fancy. Next, we want to avoid sodium fluoride. So that's in your toothpaste and your tap water. You want to avoid that pretty much at all costs. You also want to avoid washing your food and certain things in tap water. Filtered water doesn't really get fluoride out of the water. You need either a water distiller or a reverse osmosis system to ensure that the fluoride is actually out. In the Top T Avoiding Endocrine Disruptors course, there's a whole module on water purification and how to source water to make sure that you're not getting fluoride in it, or different xenoestrogens like birth control, EE2, things that are in the tap water. And last but not least, you want to avoid heavy metals, so things like aluminum foil, also synthetic forms of a lot of different supplements, also fortified foods, breads that are enriched with or fortified with folic acid, things like that, all of these niacin, different vitamins that are synthetic versions that are literally just metals that your body doesn't really absorb well. You don't want to use those. And you also want to make sure that if you are getting some heavy metals in, or if you've been exposed to heavy metals in the past, you don't really want to do these heavy metal detox things. You want to just get out in the sun. Melanin absorbs heavy metals and helps you detox them. So the more tan you get, the more you can handle exposure to heavy metals. So keep that in mind as well. That sums up this module, guys. I hope you guys have a pretty clear plan on how to go forward and raise your testosterone levels and keep them up high now. In the next modules, we're going to go over other hormones that correlate to testosterone and how you can optimize those as well so you can have overall hormone health.